This podcast contains explicit content.
Good evening, cowards.
This podcast is hardly focused.
Oh my God. No.
Dissecting the news, one tangent at a time.
We all have ADHD and anything else would be boring as hell.
Hello, everybody. We are Hardly Focused. Nate Fillers, Jack Gill. We are presented by the Solid Listen Podcast Network. You can find us at hardlyfocused.com. We're on your favorite podcast app. We are on YouTube. Just search for Hardly Focused.
Just look it up.
Nate, if I could get a couple of plugs out of the way. First, Zach and I interviewed content creator Woke Karen. That was in the previous episode of Hardly Focused. In that interview, we discussed cancel culture, the Chow Gardens from Sonic the Hedgehog, and a quote-unquote kindness simulator game called Doug Hugg'em. So you can watch that episode on YouTube at hardlyfocused.com/YouTube. It's also available at hardlyfocused.com. And once again, on your favorite podcast app. That was the 681st episode of the show. And then we're going to take a couple weeks off here on the show on Hardly Focused. And this, I think, might be the first time that the show has been on a break during the birthday of the show.
Yeah.
It will be so this one kind of a important, like at first I'm thinking like, okay, it's the 16th anniversary of the podcast as a whole. And okay, cool. So like the podcast can legally drive now.
Yeah.
But otherwise it's like, all right, it's such an insignificant number. I mean, it's significant. 16 years. That's a long time, but also who the hell cares? 16. But then I realized it is the 5th anniversary under the name Hardly Focused. So what better thing to do than to just not be here?
Yeah. I mean, that's an even number, 5.
Started in the early days of the pandemic. First episode, the 451st episode of this podcast. It was Mike Terrara and myself, and we kicked off the show as Hardly Focused, and it was pretty much the same show that you're hearing today. But this was before the Solid Listen Podcast Network. This was in a different climate where we had to do everything remotely by necessity, and then that's pretty much how the show has been going ever since then. So we will celebrate the 5th anniversary of the podcast as Hardly Focused, the 16th anniversary overall of the show existing, with what I call a From the Vault episode. That's
how far?
Yeah, I didn't dig too deep into the vault.
Oh, really?
I went back to December of 2024 when you, Nate, and I interviewed and hung out with musician Colton Holiday from the band Panic Division.
I remember that.
So we're ringing in 16 years as a podcast, 5 as Hardly Focused, with one of my favorite musicians, one of my favorite bands, well, 2 of my favorite musicians, and one of my favorite bands. Nate, you're the other one.
Yeah, you're pretty cool too. We're gonna jam someday. We're gonna play.
We're finally gonna do it. Nate and I used to play music together, like back in high school. It's funny. Nate's presence on the show. So Nate being part of this podcast, going all the way back to the original Ack and Jack run. 2000, I'd say probably like 2008 is when you started hanging out with us on the podcast, but it stemmed initially from you and I just playing music together, and you're just someone I called up when I'm like, hey, we're doing this thing, you want to hang out with us? And it's not it involves recording equipment, but it doesn't necessarily involve making music. But then it brought you into the fold, and here you are.
That's crazy. It's been fun, man. Each time it's like a little mini adventure.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of work, but it also isn't a lot of work because it doesn't feel like work, and the amount of stuff effort and things that go into producing every episode of the podcast. Yes, it takes time to do, but It doesn't feel like it takes time, and it doesn't feel like work. And
yeah, I'm thinking about like the earlier days. Like, dude, I used to prepare. Like, you're like, we're gonna do one, and I was just like, I would like go on like news sites or whatever, and I would just like write down notes, like, oh, maybe talk about this, like, and like I would be so nervous, and then I'd get like a beer in me, and then like I'd be like just very talkative, and then the beer like halfway through the show would run out, and I would come back to my Eeyore self of, oh God, the beer is gone, and now I'm myself again. What do I do? And then I tried too hard. And it was just like, well, the first half of the show was good until the beer ran off and I started trying too hard. But now we've gotten to a point where we could just, riff. We can just like hang out. It's very no anxiety over here. Like, of course, I've always wanted like the episode to be good, but I mean, if it's not good, you just don't put it out.
I very rarely do I not release an episode of this podcast. I think, ironically, the last time an episode was recorded that did not make it was with you, and it was because of a technical issue. It wasn't because of content. It was because microphones just weren't cooperating with us. And
oh yeah,
like a few days later, you and I, like, we met and we basically re-recorded the episode, and we were kind of like redoing content that we already went over. So it didn't really feel like it was wasted. And I loathe to do like a scratch take where, we go over a topic and then we start, then we re-record and go over that same topic, because it's like, okay, it's not going to feel as natural this time.
Right.
I actually took that opportunity to do more research into that topic we were discussing at that time, and felt more informed going into it the second time, so that it really did feel like a do-over, but it didn't feel like anything was forced. Because looking back in hindsight, I'm like, I'm actually kind of glad we didn't release that episode, because I sounded like a total jackass initially, and then in the re-recording I sounded like half a jackass.
I remember like recording that, and then like when we re-recorded it, you had like a different spin on it. Like you had like a whole new like opinion about it, and I was like, that's very interesting. Like over the course of like the last time we recorded, there's just this, that's all it takes. It's just one little thing. I mean, there's so many episodes we have done where like afterwards, like a little bit more information comes out, and we're like, oh, well, that puts everything in perspective and makes everything I said look really dumb, but whatever. I mean, it's a product of the time. It's not, it's shit happens.
So I know like what we were talking about in that episode, but I don't remember the context, because I have it in the board labeled as Tiger Guy, and quickly trying to look up what that story was, unfortunately, just gives me Tiger King. So I don't remember what the context was, but I got these drops out of it.
Say there's something called the eye of the tiger. They say the eye of the tiger, the most dangerous thing you ever seen in your whole life.
Yeah.
Without context, that's probably funnier than it actually is.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what he's talking about.
You talked about this eye of the tiger thing. Was it your intention to get close enough so that you could look directly into the tiger's eye?
Yes. They say that the soul is visible through the eye.
You're talking, Nate, about being comfortable, recording things. That dude with cameras shoved in his face and talking to a news reporter sounds very comfortable.
Yeah. There's no more chill possible there.
No fucks to give, as it were.
I want that.
I wish I had that. I mean, I kind of don't already. I feel like Peter in Office Space, where the hypnotist puts him under a spell and it dies. So Peter is just forever under the spell and just doesn't care anymore, to the point of, having it in the long run, positively impact his work.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy to worry. It doesn't get me anywhere.
You just need the right celebrity to pass, and then you'll be right where I am.
Oh,
No, but side note, like, no, everybody always thinks like feeling nothing is like the best thing and it's like magical, but it's like really like you forget how exciting it is to feel things. Exciting's probably the wrong word. Like, but it's like it just feels more energetic. Like, when you're apathetic towards things, it's just kind of like like there's no drive, there's nothing really pushing you in any sort of direction. But like when you're fighting against the stream, you're like, all right, now I kind of want to put effort into getting away from this and like putting in time to better myself.
mm-hmm.
So it's a weird catch, but that's all I'll say about it.
Yeah.
We can talk about it on another episode. Goodbye.
I found this. We're just recording this podcast in general from 2020, basically the start of Hardly Focused through early 2022. So pretty much 2 years where this was one of the few things that like I could look forward to and put all of my energy into, and just knowing it was a space where I could just not focus on anything else. Cause obviously I was going through my divorce at that time, and very open about it just on the show, but then just with you guys just saying like, look, this genuinely helps me. And I'm, I'm not gonna, and I'm one who keeps that stuff closer to my chest, but I wanted to at least express gratitude at the time. And even now that like, hey, of everything that's going on, not just personal life, but in the world right now, this is, one of the few outlets I have where I can just kind of shove all that aside, dip into it if I want to, but otherwise, just really just put all that aside. And then just knowing too, like, not to let it drag on for too long, if that makes sense. Like, okay, we're going to record this show. Don't do a 7-hour episode just because,
it feels good.
Right. Because then that's 7 hours of not having to worry about your life. No, we keep it to an hour or two. And then, that's enough to just kind of walk away and have that sort of adrenaline, that runner's high afterwards. Yeah.
It's a nice little pause button.
It really is. Even like with what I got going on right now, and I'm mentally in a good spot, but there's always conundrums. There's always plans happening. There's just a lot going on right now, and this for me is going to be 90 minutes ish of not having to think about that, not having to worry about that.
Except for like right now while we're talking about it.
Right, but it's like I can talk about it, but I'm not necessarily thinking about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's just funny. Like I had this like one bit where like I don't really know like how to work it, but it's basically like you can go home and tell your friends all about the show. Be like, yeah, it was a pretty good show. It made me forget all about 9/11, except for when he brought it up. When 9/11. Except for when he brought it up, like talking about how we could talk about the show and how we forgot about 9/11. In that moment, we were remembering 9/11. But before that, it was a cool 10 minutes of no 9/11.
That's fucking terrorist.
Exactly.
Becky and I are listening to an audiobook right now, and I think it's called When We Were Young or When They Were Young. It's about like the emo music, especially in the early 2000s, what we're into, Brand New, Taking Back Sunday, Dashboard Confessional, all those bands. And there's like a whole section of a chapter where they all of a sudden start talking about
9/11.
And I get how much of an impact that was on them as musicians, and like they're talking about it, but at the same time, and again, because it's, you know, the Long Island music scene is where all this came from, so it makes sense. But at the same time, I'm like, what? Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about this? This book was going great until you started talking about 9/11.
Because never forget.
Right. It just seemed out of place. I get like what they were leading up to and how it impacted them as musicians. And, you know, I know like Taking Back Sunday was recording Tell All Your Friends around that time. There was another band that I think it was, I want to say it might have been Thursday or Saves the Day. I think it was Thursday. Like they were all in California and they were going to, you know, record around that time. And then 9/11 happens and they're just like, they're talking about it. And again, like, cool, you can talk about it if it adds to the story and everything, cool. But at the same time, we didn't need to talk about 9/11 here. This book would have done just fine.
There's other reasons to,
See if I can find it.
When we were young, what band is that?
The Killers.
The Killers. Thank you. I could, for the life of me, I could not remember. I could hear it, but you know,
I knew the dude's name, the author Chris Payne, but that is not the name of the book. Gotcha. It's called Where Are Your Boys Tonight? The Oral History of Emo's Mainstream Explosion, 1999 to 2008.
I mean, it sort of makes sense though they talk about it because it's like it was a very emotional time for everybody. Like everybody was fucking terrified, like scared, like what was going to happen next. And like, of course, that like boosts the emo music industry. Like around that time, emo music was like fucking crazy popular. You had like Story of the Year, like Yellowcard, like all these like very emotionally driven bands that are, I'm sure like those bands were probably before, but I know Story of the Year came out like right around then. Yeah. Because they were fairly new when I saw them.
Yeah, I think their first album, I think Page Avenue was 2002.
Yeah. So, and like they're,
and
it's all good. It's all good stuff.
Yellowcard, do you hear who's playing drums on their new album and producing their new album?
No.
Travis Barker.
Oh, that's crazy.
I am really excited about this because Yellowcard is a band that I have always associated with insane drums.
Oh man, their original drummer, so fucking good. I can't remember his name. Sorry, buddy.
LP.
LP?
Yeah, Longinu W. Parsons III. He is absolutely maniacal behind the kit. And the song, it's the first track on not Paper Walls, Lights and Sounds. I think it's called Lights and Sounds, actually. It's got this drum fill in it that just sounds like, you know, it wasn't overdubbed. It sounds like an octopus playing.
Yeah, it's insane. He's like a machine.
And to see other drummers since LP left fill in and do that drum fill. And I actually got to meet one of them because there's a drummer from Newfound Glory, Cyrus, that filled in on one tour. And when I met them, hung out with them a couple of years ago, I was talking with Cyrus about it and asked him like how difficult that particular fill was to learn. And it was difficult. And I actually see like a clip of LP himself doing it when they played on like a late night show or something. And like what he was doing, playing it live, doing this fill during Lights and Sounds, it's like drummers don't play that way. If a drummer puts his arms where LP was putting them, you're not going to hit the drums. You're going to hit yourself.
Yeah.
So LP leaves the band in 2014. Yellowcard puts out 2 more albums, and Nate Young from Anberlin plays drums on both those albums. Nate Young, good drummer. Anberlin, fantastic. Anberlin's not a band I associate with insane drums. Nate Young, like too simplistic when you are comparing him to LP. Therefore, there's one drummer, really only one drummer that I would say could step in and take over for LP and not deviate too far from Yellowcard sound, and that would be Travis Barker.
Yeah, I would agree. Like full pedal to the metal, both of those drummers.
And
I was so surprised, like revisiting those songs like way later. I was like, dude, the drums are insane.
they're I learned, like, when I was learning how to play the drums, like Ocean Avenue is around the time Ocean Avenue came out. So that song and Only One and Way Away, like those were the songs I was playing, and it was a workout. Like I'd probably be, if I was playing those songs every day, like get behind the kit and play through those 3 songs every day, I'd probably lose weight. I'd probably be in shape. We did that.
It sounds fun. It sounds fun to play. I would never be able to do it.
We did that Hardly Focused, talking about the upcoming anniversary of the show. We did that one segment years and years ago talking about the empty apartment. The woman that like opened up her, like she took the mirror off her bathroom wall and found a complete full empty apartment on the other side. There was like no door into it. And I remember kicking off that segment by playing the song Empty Apartment by Yellowcard and just watching your head explode in real time.
Yeah, because I just forgot all about it. God. Like, so I feel like my history with Yellowcard is not very interesting, but I'll say it anyway. I really liked them. I really did. And then I saw them at Warped Tour, and Warped Tour kind of like killed them for me because like I was young and I was like of the impression of like, bands need to sound good live. Like it's not about them sounding good. Like that sounds bad, but basically if you can imagine playing a violin in a rock band and you have to jump around, you have to, violin's one of those instruments where there's a reason why professionals stay still and play it, because it's like even the smallest little like movement can get it off pitch. It's a very delicate instrument, and to like hear like Way Away with like going on, it kind of like kills the experience. Of course, I wasn't like being fair to him, but I was like, wow, these guys suck live.
They do. I've seen Yellowcard 4 times, I think, and you're not wrong in that assessment. I don't think they're a very good band live. I saw them at the first time I saw them was at Warped, and LP was in the band. So it was 2012. So LP was still in the band, and like they were okay, but I was like surprised. And of course they were Warped Tour, so they're only playing like 6 or 7 songs, and it wasn't even anywhere close to what you would consider a headlining spot. But it was just okay. It wasn't phenomenal. And then I saw them on LP's last tour. They played Ocean Avenue in full acoustic. The venue just sucked, but the show was good because they weren't like, it was subdued. So it's going to sound different, a little more straightforward, if you will. I mean, they
have a lot going on, so it's obvious why it would be very hard to tame that in a live setting.
I saw them 2 years ago with Dave Wooten, formerly of this podcast. Just by accident, not at the show accidentally. I just stumped, like, as I'm like walking into the venue, there's Dave and a couple other guys that we went to high school with, and I'm just like, I'll just hang out with you guys then. All right, cool. Yeah, and Story of the Year was actually there. They opened. And then Yellowcard played, and it's Nate Young was on drums there, and I'm just like, this is okay. Yeah. Like I'm not my mind's not blown right now by this. Oh, they were at Riot Fest too, and I went to that because they reunited at Riot Fest to play Ocean Avenue, and I caught like 2 songs during that. So anyway, Travis, fantastic producer, Travis Barker. He's really made a mark as a producer. And I know I'd argue he's following in the footsteps of like, John Feldman, for example, being, in a prolific band and saying, hey, you know what? I want to get into producing bands. I guess like taking a step from Mark Hoppus too, because Mark was doing that for a while, but like MGK and Avril Lavigne, and now Blink's 2 recent albums, And then we're gonna hear it with Yellowcard. Like he's in demand, and if he also asks too, like, "Hey, I'll do this, but can I play drums on your record?" You would be a complete moron, an imbecile to say, "Nah, that's okay."
Yeah.
Now
He
we're
did stuff with Willow too.
yeah, oh yeah, and she like didn't she like straight up? Was it you that equated it to Paramore? And isn't she like in full blown Paramore mode now?
It was it's a little similar to that. Like, but I was fucking blown away. I was like, this is fucking cool. I like it.
Yeah, I liked it better than the whip my hair back and forth.
Mhm.
That
It was a
whole
little
thing
more
from
punk
like
rocky.
yeah, and she even did something. I think she did something with MGK that was also really good. Well, she's following in her mother's footsteps. Remember when Jada Pinkett was like the front woman of a metal band?
I do not, but
for a hot minute. Yeah, that was the thing that existed, right? Like there's talk of Mariah Carey having a fully recorded, like full length grunge album that was recorded in like 1995 that like she says it will never see the light of day. And there's probably a good reason for that, because then Jada Pinkett says, "Hey, you know what I'm going to front a metal band and we're actually going to release this music." And people heard it and said, "No, thank you. Please stop."
Yeah. Dang.
But I do want to hear the Mariah Carey album. Maybe one day that will it could surface this year if it was
post-mortem probably.
maybe. Well, I mean, if she, if it was truly recorded in 95, 30 years ago.
Yeah, maybe, like there's hope. Like I just think about Nirvana a lot in those cases. This is like all of these unreleased tracks come out after.
Yeah, like
yeah.
Was that like with the lights out, that box set?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You never know.
It is insane just how frequently Nirvana reunites now.
It's insane that their impact is still strong.
Yeah.
Considering like they had like what, 2 albums? 3?
We got
I can't remember.
Bleach, Nevermind, In Utero. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you want to count Unplugged or Muddy Banks of the Wishka, but like studio albums, there's only 3.
And that was in the 90s, the early 90s, and it's like that was so long ago. They don't have any more songs. They didn't write anymore, but those songs are strong enough to still be something today. It's wild, because if you think about like other 90s like one hit wonders or like other bands from like the 90s that were really popular and still are today, it's like, I don't know, they're not as strong.
Gin Blossoms.
Okay, that's not fair, because they're
like
hell of a writer, man.
Sure. I mean, especially that first album.
They don't get the respect that they deserve.
No, they don't. I applaud them for at least sticking together, touring constantly. I mean, there's a crowd every time I've seen them so many times, and like it's never a sold out show, but there's always a lot of people there, and they put on a good show after all these years. But they were, people are going to call them a one hit wonder. I'd say a 3-hit wonder. Nirvana, what I like about them is that their last, quote unquote, last song, you're right, was legitimately their last song. That was quite literally the last thing they recorded as a band that Kurt recorded, and it just happened to have been a complete song. And he died, and it just sat and collected dust for 8 years before Courtney Love got her head out of her hole.
That's a good pun.
Thank you.
Because she's in a band. She was in a band called Hole.
And there's also a song called Head Like a Hole, which was popular around that time.
The same time of the 90s.
Yeah. That's a little bit of a musical joke for you. So.
There's a little comedy for you to sprinkle into your ears.
But yeah, she finally relented and allowed that song to be released. Although, Nate, some music trivia for you.
Sweet.
When Hole did their own MTV Unplugged, they performed that song. And it was called You've Got No Right at the time, because Courtney is just such an intelligent human being and got the name of the song correct.
Mm-hmm.
And they played a version, and she said this is the last song Kurt ever wrote, and then they performed it. And then a few years later, well, the file sharing. Now, here's the thing, going back to that book we're talking about, whose name I've already forgotten, Where Are Your Boys Tonight? They do talk about the dawn of the file sharing era. And that song, that Nirvana song, actually, now it's not mentioned in the book, but that was a song that was effectively released. It was going to be released anyway, but it released super early because, we weren't cracking down on file sharing yet.
It's so wild to think about, like, Napster, like the impact it had on like the music industry, because there's so many bands that probably we would never have heard of if it wasn't for like some bands just like, doing the thing where they put their band title, but then they also put like 7 other bands after it. So like if you search for like, a new Nirvana song, and then it's like you get somebody else's, but like it's crazy because a lot of bands took off because of that. It's strange. It's like an oxymoron because like they didn't make money. Like, they were pirating the songs, but in a sense, it kind of shined a light on how flawed the music industry was. It's like, look, these bands are striving despite not getting the record sales. It's like maybe record sales isn't what drives the industry.
So there's a band called Chasing Highs, and they were originally called Wilba Sound. And I learned about them. And if you look up Wilba Sound, one of the first images that comes up is Blink-182. And that was because a song that they'd put out in around like 2008, 2009, file sharing was still a thing. I think I was still using LimeWire around that time. A song that they had was being circulated as Up All Night by Blink-182, because even though that song came out in 2011, the band was talking about it in 2009 when they reunited, because they had said, hey, it's the first song that we've written since getting back together. It's the first song that we've recorded, but they didn't release it because it wasn't finished yet. So then people are like, or maybe Wilba Sound did this themselves. Chasing High did this themselves, where they just released their own song and called it Up All Night, labeled it Blink-182, and then other people are finding like it's a totally different band. It's not them. There's another band called Student Rick, and I only learned about this last year that it was the name of the band that did this song, and their song was called "Falling for You," and it's on Spotify. Because it came up on one of my Spotify, like Discover Weekly playlists. And it's so funny how the Discover Weekly works. Because this one must have scanned, like Spotify probably scanning my computer for shit, probably saw this song in there under a different band's name. I think I actually have it under The Starting Line. It's not under Student Rick. I think I have it labeled as The Starting Line, Falling for You.
Well, you should sell that on eBay.
But it was from an album they did called Soundtrack for a Generation. The song came out, I think, in 2000. Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm going to guess 2000. They're on Victory Records. But I bring all this up because on LimeWire, back in the day, that song was attributed to Plus 44.
Oh, no kidding.
The Blink-182 side project, because that was another one where they talked about the project. They talked about Plus 44, but at the time, no music had been released yet. So someone or the band themselves just put Falling for You up there on the file sharing websites and labeled it Plus 44 and tricked a bunch of people, myself included, into thinking it was Plus 44. And then at some point then it got attributed to The Starting Line, and in my music library, that's how I've had it. And then only find out a year ago, the band that did it is called Student Rick.
There you go. And now you have Spotify doing that thing with Plus 44, where it's like Plus 44 just put out a new song, and it's like a fucking trap song.
Dude, okay. That happened.
Drives me insane.
That happened to me today with the band Sparta. Do you listen to Sparta?
Yeah. Pre Mars Volta.
Yes. They were when At the Drive-In broke up, they splintered into two bands. You had Cedric and Omar go off to do the Mars Volta, and then Paul, Tony, and Jim Ward formed Sparta. Yeah. And I was listening to Porcelain today, and I'm looking at their Spotify profile, and they've reunited. They've put out a couple albums in the last 4 years, but they said, "Hey, we have a new song." So I open it up, and it's like 4 different group names that are very clearly like trap artists and Sparta, and it's just some schmo who calls himself Sparta, and the dopes at Spotify just, okay, we'll put this under Sparta then. It's like, yeah, because this is the post-hardcore band from El Paso, Texas, Sparta.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit more believable than Plus 44.
Yeah, Sparta sounds like a common name compared to Plus 44.
Yeah, I grew up in Sparta, so like it's a thing, it's a place.
Yes,
but Plus 44 is very specific, and it doesn't mean anything.
Well, it does mean something. That's the country code in the United Kingdom.
Well, I'm just saying, like, for the sake of like, it's not like 911. Like it's not like a like one of those. It means something, but
it is fascinating that like Mark and Travis decided that they wanted to name the band after, like, they wanted to put a number in it, like Blink-182.
Mm-hmm.
They could have picked anything. They went with that.
And it just makes you wonder, like, why 182? It's yeah.
Isn't the I think it's an urban legend, but it's the number of times the word fuck is uttered in the film Scarface. I think that was one of the
legends. I don't know if that's accurate though.
Where'd you get that beauty scar, tough guy? Eating pineapple?
It's true.
Yeah, Plus 44, they named the band one because they were in the UK, and I think it was in the UK when Tom initially announced, or at least intimated, that he was going to be leaving the band.
Yeah.
So they instead, so Mark and Travis started talking about, well, let's just start our own band with hookers and was it crack and hookers or blackjack and hookers? Blackjack and hookers.
Dude, I should have gotten that quicker. I love Futurama.
I was watching the newer Futurama a couple days ago on Hulu. It's good. It feels like everyone sounds a little older, but it hasn't missed a beat.
Yeah, they're smart writers.
So, yeah, there you go. There's a history of music on Hardly Focused, because Nate and I are music guys, and there's always a lot to talk about when it comes to music. And I will say, Jim Ward, he's kind of like John Nolan. Just he's got a very distinct, unique voice that is like, you know, for me, no homo, but it just like, it really attracts me. It just gets my attention.
That's timbre for you, baby. There's some people that have just such rich timbre that's just does stuff to you.
I've never seen At the Drive-In, but I saw Sparta at Riot Fest. They were actually a legitimate last second replacement for Placebo, because the guys in Placebo, they had like passport issues or something, and they couldn't get over to the United States to play at Riot Fest. So Sparta was I guess like they were available. Made it on over and played, and they were good. I really liked them.
That almost fits. I can kind of see it.
I'm so like Placebo, I feel like would be bigger. Like when you look at the bill, because they played, like Sparta played at like 4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Placebo to take that spot, Placebo, I feel should be playing a little later in the day. I can only name like one song by Placebo. But they're a band I feel that would be better suited for the 6 or 7 p.m. slot, not 4
You don't
p.m.
know Bitter End?
No, I know Infrared, and there's a song that we use as a bumper here on this show, and I'm blanking on the.
Yeah, Pure Morning.
Yes, Pure Morning.
Yeah, like that was the one that. But I mean, Bitter End is a fucking banger. It's like I think it's like only 2 keys, and it's like fucking it rocks.
Is that if I may sing the guitar part? Is that the one where it begins?
Nah.
Okay. Is that even Placebo?
Burn it, burn it, burn it, burn it.
Okay.
And then a fucking driving bass line, do. You know, it's fucking awesome.
Those are the, like, when I'm making music beds for the show, that's the shit that I like.
Yeah, dude, it's fucking, and it has like this like cool whiny guitar that play like not like whiny, but like synth like guitar that just makes like the purest tone. It just like sounds so pure and nice against like the heaviness. Yeah.
Why am I stupid? I've never heard this song before.
The song rips.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to listen to it now. This is gonna go right on my playlist. I have like a running playlist on Spotify. All right, well that's that. I played enough of that to piss YouTube off.
Yay!
When this goes up, I'll get the copyright claim. You're not gonna make money off of this now. Like yeah, what money? Where? All those ducats rolling in.
Yeah, because like fair use, where we weren't talking about it in like a constructive manner, or even informing people about it, or we weren't. See, the joke here is that we were doing all these things that are covered under what is called fair use, but that's something YouTube doesn't understand.
No, and YouTube also, I mean, it's all AI that looks over that stuff.
Yeah.
But I learned, I believe, Trent Lightly taught me this, that on YouTube you can show your bare ass. You can show your anatomy. You can just like,
if you have one.
Yeah, as long as you're like demonstrating something. And the video that they cited, that for whatever reason I looked this up to verify, and I wish I didn't, was some dude like demonstrating like a home waxing product. And he just has his bare ass just right there in the camera, just right up there. And it was okay. YouTube's like, this is fine because he's demonstrating a product. But fuck you for playing 10 seconds of a Placebo song.
Yeah, in the sake of criticizing or educating or what, I forget all the other ones, but it's definitely like under the like, hey, we're just showing it.
Correct.
Like we're talking about it.
And we're talking over it.
Yeah.
It's because I didn't talk over enough of it. That's a problem. This is the shit that like the BBC would get heat for way back in the day. This happened with Oasis when Be Here Now came out, and BBC was given, or maybe like one of the other radio stations out there, because like in UK there's like 4 radio stations, but they were given a couple of tracks from Be Here Now that they could play. And then they were told, you're not getting any more music until the album comes out because you didn't talk over it enough.
Yeah. And nowadays, people get away with just re-uploading somebody else's video, but then they put a little tiny them in the corner of them like being like, oh, or wow. And it's like, that's it. That's enough. That's transformative enough for the YouTube to be like, it's yours now. But like, God forbid you play a song and you're like, hey, have you heard this? It's got this like cool sound effect. And it's like, well, can't play it.
When we were talking with Woke Karen, I brought up the Kindness Simulator game, Doug Hugg'em, that I mentioned earlier. Oh, and by the way, if I can finish the plug that I started 30 minutes ago.
Jesus Christ.
The April 10th episode, we'll be doing the 672nd installment of Hardly Focused. That was the first episode of 2025. So I was going back to January. It's myself, Mike, and Nicole. And in that episode, we talked about Nicole's trip to Good Springs, as made famous by the game Fallout New Vegas. We also talked about Nikki Glazer's performance at the 2025 Golden Globes, very heavily lauded, somewhat relevant because she is invited back. She's going to be doing next year's Golden Globes.
Good.
And we also talked about Adrian Brody when he hosted Saturday Night Live back in 2003 and donned the dreads and did the bad Jamaican accent. And then after we did that, it was revealed that he was never actually kicked off of Saturday or banned from Saturday Night Live. He's just literally was never invited back. Lauren says that they just, they don't ban people. They just don't invite him back.
Yeah.
But,
which is kind of a ban.
Kind of. Yeah. The Replacements definitely got banned.
Oh, well, yeah.
They definitely got banned. They
did some fucked up shit.
So there's a great account on Instagram called SNL Reels, and instead of S, it's Z, so REELZ. And enjoy them while they're around, because every day they post the occasional sketch from SNL, but they typically post the musical performances, because you're never going to find these anywhere. And they posted recently the two performances from the Replacements when they were on the show back in the 80s. The two performances that purportedly got the banned, quote unquote, banned for life until 2014 when they played on Jimmy Fallon's show. But, and I'm watching them. I'm like, this is brilliant. They were apparently shit-faced when they were performing. This is great. Mm-hmm. It's just the Replacements being the Replacements. What the hell?
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's rock and roll, baby.
They got some great performances on this page. They got the two Tragically Hip performances from 94, I think it was, when Dan Aykroyd tried his best to introduce the Tragically Hip to the United States.
Oh my God.
And the US said, hey, we're just not that into it. Whereas Canada literally shut down. That's not an exaggeration. The country of Canada. I said country. Canada. They literally shut down the night the Tragically Hip played their final show. It was that's how no band in the United States has ever had that impact. Think about it. No band has ever done like a last show or a show that was so big that crowds of thousands gathered in like a city square to watch on a projector, or it was broadcast on every television network. Like, yeah, they've done like benefit shows where, you know, they'll show them on various networks, but no single band. I can't think of one from the US that had that impact like the Tragically Hip had on Canada, where not only was their final show broadcast on CBC and in city squares and all that, but then when Gord Downey passed away, it was a national day of mourning. Like the US is just, we're just angry
all the time.
We don't do any of that.
Do you blame us? We're the worst.
We are the worst. we are the worst. All right. I segued into something. I was getting ready to segue into something, and then I remembered I didn't plug that last in the vault, from the vault.
That's fine. We're Hardly Focused.
We are. This episode especially, true to its name, Hardly Focused. All right. Well, you mentioned yourself being Eeyore earlier.
Yeah.
Just which, I mean, don't sell yourself short. Despite the fact you're wearing blue right now.
Tactical.
A while ago, I think it's one of our most popular videos we ever did on Hardly Focused. Controversial too, because we're a bunch of Yanks. We talked about a cartoon from Europe called John Dillermand, which features a chap that uses his incredibly long schlong for everyday uses, but it's marketed towards children, and we were very confused by it. So I learned the other day that in Germany, now this doesn't necessarily involve any appendages, but it's still one of those bizarre things that seems to make sense in Germany, doesn't make sense to me as an American. And it's a show and a character based out of Germany on it's a children's network, children's television network called Kika, Kika. And the character is called Bernd das Brot. And forgive me, I'm about to butcher all the pronunciations. Bernd das Brot, that is German for Bernard the Bread. This show features a puppet who is a perpetually depressed loaf of bread.
Same.
His catchphrases include Mist, which is the German equivalent of crap, or damn, as the English subtitles say.
Mm-hmm.
His other catchphrases include, I would like to be left alone. I would like to leave this show. And my life is hell.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a show aimed towards children. The show, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary, so they debuted in the year 2000. And this network, Kika, they didn't air anything between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. So it was like dead air. It was just like a title card and nothing else. Because that was a thing back then, like television, even 25 years ago. I figured that would have stopped by then. Maybe it did in the U.S., maybe not in Europe, but there's a time the television stations stopped programming at a certain time of day, and then they started again at like 6 a.m. the next day. So this network Kika did that, and it was decided, let's just play Bernd das Brot for those 9 hours overnight, just on a loop, just to fill time. And that worked to their advantage because the show immediately became popular with adults, namely stoners and drunks.
Like a lot of things.
Like Adult Swim.
Yeah.
That's how Adult Swim is so popular, because it's people who are awake and high at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I mean,
weird shit. But
yeah.
It's groundbreaking comedy.
Like, when you wake up in the middle of the night and Xavier Renegade Angel is on.
Yup.
Or there's
no rhyme or reason to that guy. Didn't he have like a bird nose or something? Or or something like that.
Like a giant beak. And it was just like really poorly animated, like computer animation. Like obviously
his legs were backwards, I think. Or that could be something else. That could be anything.
I don't think I ever watched that show fully awake and coherent.
I thought it was hilarious because it was just so broken.
If I wasn't waking up to Xavier Renegade Angel, I was waking up to a test of the emergency alert system. On
I mean, yeah, the Cowboy Bebop was good too. Like, because when you're sleeping on the couch and then all of a sudden, you're like, okay,
back.
Like, that's a good alarm.
Yeah, back, dude. When I was paying for cable, there was one night. It was right before the live action show debuted on Netflix. Cowboy Bebop, Adult Swim, Toonami. One Saturday night did a full marathon. Their entire block that night was Cowboy Bebop. It was like 5 hours of Cowboy Bebop, and you best believe I watched all 5 hours. And I don't do that anymore. I don't sit and watch like a single show for any longer than like 45 minutes at a time. I just don't have the attention span.
No, it's tough. But I mean, it was the start of the pandemic when I decided to finally finish that show, and it's very cathartic.
And then we got the live action show, which I don't know if we talk about.
You were not okay with it. I was okay with it. Like we talked about it a little bit. Like I get like kind of weird looks when I'm like, it's a thing. It's not like, dude, you need to drop everything and see it. It's not like Breaking Bad or
Yeah.
like these shows that change the way people want to do different shows and everything. It was there. They made a lot of creative choices that I was like, why? But you know, like I heard this fun quote when somebody was talking about like the Resident Evil movies.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense now, of course. And it probably did then, but it just kind of went over my head. It's just like, well, what's the point of making the movies exactly like the game? Because it's like you already have it. You already have that story. Like if you want that story, just play the game.
Yeah.
And like also like kind of kills the drive to play the game if you just watch the movie.
That's why I like The Last of Us and Fallout, where The Last of Us is, yeah, you could play the game. The show is doing a good job of not only like reenacting things that happen in the game, but then there's also whole episodes that deviate entirely from the game based on like one little thing that's brought up in the game, for example.
Yeah.
And then Fallout is so like, it's the universe, it's you're watching because it's set in the universe and it could be its own. It's not based off of any one game. It effectively could be its own thing. Resident Evil, I feel like, started off strong, and then all the sequels, it just like
they just knew it was goofy and
yeah. And then they tried to reboot. Remember they did a reboot a couple of years ago, and it was a solid like 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. It was not.
Well, they made a lot of weird choices in casting. It was like, oh, okay. They casted characters that look 0% like they did in the game.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
They need to do a Resident Evil movie that utilizes the original Japanese to English translated script from the first game.
Biohazard?
Yeah, the original release of it with such lines as, "You are almost a Jill sandwich."
Yeah. I mean, there was talks that like George A. Romero was going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah, it has to be that poor script.
It's just
here, take this lockpick. It will be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it.
God, the first few games, it's just so fucking good. the way the script is.
I never finished the first game. I've played through it. I've played it. I played it on Sega Saturn. And because of the way the Saturn is set up, it doesn't use memory cards. It uses an internal battery, like a watch battery. And the stupid battery died. So I lost my save file.
Damn.
And then I played the remaster of the GameCube version on PS4 and got like 3/4 of the way through. And then something else came out and I got distracted and never went back. 2, I played the 2 remake last year. I only played as Chris. I think it's Chris. I think I started. Is it Claire that's in 2? Is it Chris and Claire?
I think so.
Yeah, I started her playthrough.
I get them kind of confused.
I do too. I know Jill's in the third one, Jill Valentine, and I also know that. And I also know that Code Veronica is technically Resident Evil 3, and not Resident Evil 3.
I just watched a bunch of like Let's Plays of them because it was like the start of the pandemic and all of a sudden like apocalyptic stuff was like very fitting. Like it just felt fitting, and so I just kind of like binged it. But I still will always remember to this day being a little guy in my friend's basement playing the first Resident Evil, and we didn't have those the LED TVs that y'all have today. So what you usually had to do is turn off all the lights so that like it, you could see it good. and everything. So we're in the basement with all the lights out. We have no idea that this game is a scary game because before this game, there hadn't really been any horror games. It was just, mostly adventures and, all those types of things. We're walking down a hallway and dogs burst through the window.
Hell yeah.
And my friend and I throw the controllers down and run as fast as we can upstairs. And then we were upstairs and we're like, I don't want to go down there and turn it off. Like, you go down there and turn it off. It's like, it's your house, man. Why don't you go? I don't want to go. All right, we'll both go down there and turn it off.
All right. It's so fascinating to me, the impact that particular scene in the first Resident Evil game had, because maybe it's just because I had read about it and I knew like it was coming. It never scared me. It never had that jump scare element to it. However, Dino Crisis, which was like Resident Evil meets Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
The first game I remember, I'm playing it on the Sega Dreamcast, and it has its like dogs jumping through the window moment where like you meet like the last remaining scientist who's on this island who knows anything about what's going on with these dinosaurs. And all of a sudden a tyrannosaur just busts through the wall and eats the scientist. And when that happened the first time, it scared the shit out of me because you don't know it's coming.
Yeah.
But back then, too, the thing that would give it away, and this happened with PlayStation games, happened with Dreamcast games, is that not only would the game freeze for like a half second because you knew something was about to happen,
Load. Yeah.
but then the disc drive would whir. So if it got to a point where if I heard that happen, I would have that instant moment to be like, something's about to happen. And it would dilute the jump scare to a degree.
Yeah. I love like that trope of like, one of the things I wish I made the sketch around, but I just really love the idea of these games where something's about to happen and autosave happens. You're like, something's about to happen. Like it auto saved the game. So what is about to happen? And just capturing that element of like the auto save, like warning you about something. It's just such a funny trope.
That's something that we are very spoiled by nowadays. Autosave. Because you're talking about the original Resident Evil. Back then, would you had the typewriters. You had to find the ink ribbons for the typewriters. Yeah. So you were very limited. You had to be very strategic when it came to saving the game. Nowadays, we are ruined by the autosave function. The giveaway nowadays is when the amount of pickups, the power-ups, everything that's like you can collect, when they suddenly become very plentiful, things that were very sparse throughout the game, all of a sudden you're finding them everywhere, and it's leading you. It's like, all right, something is happening. I'm being led up to something that's about to happen because now I'm just picking up health packs left, right, and center.
Yeah.
What angers me? So Assassin's Creed Shadows just came out. I'm not playing that. I'm sure I'll play it eventually. But as I do with all the Assassin's Creed games, I'm not yet playing it. I understand it's doing very well. It's set in Japan, which people have wanted for a long time. And it seems interesting to me. Again, I will play it at some point, but not getting around to it anytime soon. However, right now I'm playing Mirage, which was the Assassin's Creed game from a couple of years ago, which was touted as being a quote unquote like return to basics. It wasn't some giant sprawling open world game that would take you 100 hours to finish. It was more linear and shorter. But it's a thing that I've noticed with every Assassin's Creed game, and it alternates, but depending on the game, where you either have a system where your health regenerates over time, or your health doesn't regenerate and you need to go out of your way to find health items, food, health kits, elixirs, stuff like that. And that's Mirage. That is the system in Mirage, and I hate that because we're so conditioned now to having your health automatically regenerate over time.
Yeah.
And there are other like Assassin's Creed games where that happens. That happens in Odyssey. I think it happened in Origins, but it doesn't happen in Valhalla.
Yeah, so that's one of my biggest criticisms, I think, of Echoes of Wisdom,
Yeah.
the Zelda game.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Sorry.
That was important.
It was.
My biggest criticism for like Echoes of Wisdom is that the health system was like a little bit too easy. It was like, you have your normal, like every now and then you'll kill a bad guy and they'll drop a heart, or like it will be in a jar or something that you break. But also you have this magical wand where you could like spawn a bed and you just lay down in the bed and you get your hearts back. So there was like, I played through the entire game without dying once, because it was just like, whenever you're low on hearts, you just go off to the side and put a bed down, and then you just sit in the bed for a little bit. And it's just like, okay, like I get it. Like it would probably be a lot harder without that. And I'm not all about like, I don't play games to be challenged. I play games to forget how awful the world is. So I get it. Like it's fine, but it was just like one of those things where I was like, this game's a little bit too easy. A little bit.
Yeah, that's like Skyrim is kind of like that, where once you master your healing spells, there's no need to collect any health power-ups. You still will, like any potions that restore your health. I still hoard them, like you read about, but I'm always just using my healing spells. And then those games too, I mean, you can just sleep anywhere.
Yeah.
Or you fast travel. There's so many bastardized ways of healing yourself that there's no reason to have any sort of health kit or anything like that.
Does that take away from it though? Because like for me, like it's a battle, because like I can see both sides of it. Like if taking that away made it too hard, like it would kind of piss me off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I just don't like, because I mean, that's what most like Super Nintendo games were, and all of these, because we were talking about save states and saving the game. Like these cartridges couldn't hold a lot of game, so like naturally the way they made a game long is by making it hard as fuck, and you can't save like once you get to a certain spot. Like once you beat a very hard area, you can't save it. It's just like all or nothing. And that was a way to make the game like 4 times longer than it actually was, because these cartridges couldn't hold a lot.
Yeah, it blew my mind that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 had a battery in it that you could use to save the game, but then like Sonic and Knuckles didn't. And Sonic and Knuckles, like separately as separate games, and Knuckles was longer. But then the whole thing was you would combine the games, and then you have one big game that used the save option. But that was, again, a rarity 30 years ago. Yeah. For me, I'm someone who kind of likes to RP a little bit when I'm playing. So with a game like, like the Bethesda games, your Skyrim, your Fallouts, what have you, RPing to the degree of I could use healing spells, I could just fast travel, or just sleep in this bed or whatever, or I could pretend I'm an actual human and consume all these items I have that are designed to replenish my health.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's really an easy way of ever telling if you're going to get or like how that system is going to impact your the way you play, to the point where it's not annoying. Because like with Assassin's Creed Mirage, for example, it's not like super annoying, but if you like take any damage, then you're limited with how many elixirs you have, health elixirs. Refilling those, unless you find them in the wild and they're scarce, to refill them is a pain in the ass because you can only do them at vendor. You do that at vendors. There's food you can pick up along the way, but you have to find it. Not necessarily forage it. You just have to like stumble upon it. And if you see the little like, button prompt come up that says eat, then do it. Cause that's how you're going to regen your health.
The wall chicken.
Yeah. Yes.
So to speak.
I like, you know what I like? I like, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I love the cooking mini game there. I love that because it's not a game that, and I've never played the Long Dark. I know Fro loves the Long Dark. I imagine that's a game in, I guess, Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, where like cooking food is a process. At least with those two Zelda games, it makes it fun. It makes it worth your time. It makes it worthwhile. Like it's something, it's to the point where you actually enjoy doing it. You look forward to doing it.
It can kind of be like your own little side quest too. Like if you're not really feeling like fighting a boss or anything, you could just like kind of go around and forage and collect like durians or whatever's. Durians are not in Tears of the Kingdom.
No, they're disgusting though. They smell horrific.
Too smelly. But like, yeah. There would be many times when I would just play Breath of the Wild, just walk around to see like what things I could collect and like, of course the game is what you make of it. And I mean, I guess you could say the same for Echoes of Wisdom. It's like, if you didn't want healing to be that easy, just don't use the bed. Like it's pretty easy to just like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like challenge yourself to be like, this is a no bed run. Or something like that.
I need to correct myself. It's gonna be one of those things where if I don't do it, I'm just gonna be angry at myself for the next 3 weeks. Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield.
Oh, right.
Not Chris. I think Chris is a different game.
I didn't even realize you said that. Because like Leon is like a huge part of 2.
I was thinking of Chris Redfield.
Yeah.
Right. And that Is he 4? Is he in Resident Evil 4?
I think 4, but he's also in 1, isn't he?
Okay.
Yeah. He disappears for a little bit and then he comes back. And you're just like, oh, okay. That's it.
This Bernd das Brot show, the bread, the depressed loaf of bread, the 85th episode of the show revealed why he's depressed.
Okay.
Here's the full quote from the bread himself. A long, long time ago, I fell in love with a beautiful slim baguette. She was so unbelievably charming and funny, but unfortunately, my affection was in vain. She only had eyes for this perfect stranger, a multigrain bread. It was so devastating. My heart has been a dry clump of flour ever since.
Yeah.
He's just never happy. He's never happy.
Did I ever explain why Eeyore is sad? I feel like they don't.
No.
But then again, I never really like ventured down that.
Well, isn't he always losing his tail?
Yeah, it's like pinned on.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be depressed too if like my tail was pinned on.
But it's pretty interesting how like all the different characters have like the different like mental states. Like whether that was planned or not, it's just really funny that Eeyore's depression, Piglet's anxiety. I think,
that sounds right.
And like Tigger is ADHD or something. I can't remember any of it, but and Christopher Robin's like schizophrenia or something. It's like, it's pretty interesting. I don't think it was planned, but it's kind of funny how that's kind of lines up.
Someone on Reddit asked why Eeyore is always so depressed, and the top response to it says, quote, "Oh, come on. Would you be happy-go-lucky if the only thing keeping a body part attached to you was a nail in your anus?"
Checks out.
The
But the bread is sad because of love. That's okay.
I guess you could say this bread is blue. You see, the reason is when bread is moldy, it gets blue, you see.
And then you can't eat it because it's bad.
Right. And if any
also blue is the color of sad.
and also if you have a loaf of bread and you see a little bit of mold on it, don't just cut that piece off and continue eating what's not there, because that stuff is spread all throughout your loaf of bread. You're only seeing the little bit of it that made it to the crust, made it to the top.
True.
I can always tell. I mean, very rarely do I ever let a package of bread spoil, but when I can see the condensation on the bag inside, I'm like, okay, that's bad. Or if it just starts to go stale despite being in the bag, sealed.
I had a loaf of bread in my dorm room that never molded. It was like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
It was like maybe like it was one of those things where I left it over break.
Yeah.
And then I came back and it was still like nothing on it. And I'm like, this is like 6 months expired and it's just been sitting out. It's not in the fridge or anything. It's just, I don't know. Do people put their bread in fridge?
No, you're not supposed to. It's like the cold. People do it. Like they freeze their bread so they can use it later, or they put it in the fridge to add to the longevity of it. But
it just makes it bad.
Right. It actually hurts it in the long run. What I do is I buy the Pepperidge Farm bread. It's a little pricier, but they double bag it.
Yeah, I have the Pepperidge Farm.
Butter
bread or whatever.
Yeah, they do butter bread. I get the Hearty White kind.
Oh yeah, I got that because they were out of butter bread.
I have never had a pack of that go bad on me. Like it's definitely gone, like it's not as fresh over time, like after a couple of weeks. Yeah. Like, you go a week past the use by date, sell by date, whatever. And it's like, it's not as fresh. It's not as delicious as it was when you first unwrap the second plastic, the second bag. But I've never had it go blue. I've never had it go moldy. And maybe it's just because it's double bagged. I don't know why.
Or it could be the preservatives.
Sure. Yeah. They probably cure that. Pump it full of salt.
Well, my wife won't allow us to have bread that's a few days past the expiration.
Well, she's a baker by trade, so she
is, but like I also like agree with it. I agree, like I've now noticed that it doesn't taste as good,
right?
Like obviously, but it's like, but it doesn't. My brain just associates it with mold, like it's got that like bitter flavor, and you're just like, no, it's not good anymore. It's not moldy, but it's just no.
What's the matter? The food ain't that bad, baby.
I've had bad experiences with milk going bad, same. And I'm just now like
traumatized.
I'm traumatized by it. And it, like with bread, anything that's perishable, they say like you have up to a week after the date before you should throw it out. Mm-hmm. But I'm right there with you. Like the second we hit that date, it's in the trash.
Yeah.
And then I feel bad because I'm like, I spent money on this and it's like, it's gone to waste.
Yeah.
But, all right. We can leave it at that.
Hell yeah.
Nate, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I enjoy having you on the show.
It's always a good time.
As I have.
Cathartic.
It is
That's
cathartic.
my word of the month. That's my word. How many times you should go through all the episodes that I'm on and just cut out all the times I've said cathartic.
Cathartic.
I'm sure it's like a lot. Don't actually do that though, because live your life.
I'm going to do that.
Okay. But like, I'm sure it's just a good word.
It is a good word. I try to remember. I try to do the least amount of editing possible on these shows. So
that's true.
But I've always enjoyed having you here, going back
I
to
always have a good time.
2000.
It's a nice pause.
Going back to 2008, the Yak and Jack era, and then early talk radio meltdown, 2009, and then here today, hardly focused, 2025. So if this is going to be the ultimately the, well, let's say the first part of the birthday celebration of this podcast, and we'll do the second part when we're back in a few weeks. Well, then I'm glad you were here for this one.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad I was here too.
And it was truly a hardly focused episode.
Yeah, we didn't talk about anything that was on the sheet, did we?
No, we did. We actually did. We did get to some of the prep, but it was it was like the Oreo cream. I'm sorry, the Hydrox cream filling in a sandwich of tangents.
Oh, true.
But we will return the week of April 14th. So the 7th. We'll talk to you again on the 17th. That will be when we bookend the anniversary of this podcast. 16 years as a podcast, 5 years as the name Hardly Focused. Which, we're at the point now, the show's been going on for so long, we're at the point now where I just kind of look at the dates and look at the numbers. The second I hit the record button, and I say, we're hitting a milestone here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting older. Suddenly the birthdays don't matter anymore. One day you wake up and you're
not past 25.
Yeah, I mean, what happens? Like 35 is like when the midlife crisis starts. That's about it. And from that point on, you look forward to when you're eligible for Social Security.
Yeah, I'm 2 years away from 40. That's what 38 is.
Well, hey, you can look forward to 39 when you're 1 year away from 40. And I'll be right there with you.
All right.
For the rest of you, thank you for listening. We'll talk at you in a few weeks. Thanks for listening. See ya. Bye.
Goodbye.
Randomization may not have happened.
This has been a presentation of the Solid Listen Podcast Network.